Today I am going to be interviewing Lorraine Ramirez, a social worker who works for DCFS in the Emergency Response Unit. Lorraine Ramirez has graduated college at Cal State LA in 2002 with a social work degree. She is a mother of two and is also married. I would like to ask you first, what made you want to become a DCFS social worker?
Well, thank you, Isabella. I first wanted to pursue a position at DCFS because I wanted to work with uh, with children who had been in the system, with children who had been abused and neglected.
Has your motivation changed since you started?
My motivation, no, I still am motivated to work with families and motivated to work with abused and neglected children.
Can you maybe share a moment that reminded you on why you wanted to continue in this field?
A moment. Well, I think anytime that you see um, a successful reunification, when perhaps maybe when children have been removed from their homes because the situation's been unsafe, and when you see them successfully return to an environment where they're safe, that's always a motivation to continue um, with your passion.
Now, it seems like as social workers, you guys have a lot of work to deal with. What is a part of your day that tends to be the most unpredictable?
Well, I think for social workers, most unpredictable would probably be duty days, especially in the emergency response department. A lot of times workers are placed on a duty schedule where it's kind of like a lottery system where it determines whether or not they're going to be assigned a referral where they have to go out and investigate. Um, Typically, it's more severe allegations and situations where children are placed in immediate risk and immediate danger. So those can be unpredictable because you, one, don't know if you're going to be um, receiving a referral for the day, and two, you don't know what you're getting.
What does a typical day look like for you?
Well, as a supervisor, a typical day for me would usually be immediately opening up my emails. I tend to have a lot of meetings scheduled during the day. I consult with my workers to see where they're at with their referrals and with their investigations. Usually that would take up a big portion of my day. A lot of times I'll have referrals or investigations to review and to close, court reports to read, and again, just a lot of different meetings. Occasionally we'll have trainings.
How much time is spent working in the field and how much time is spent doing paperwork?
For me as a supervisor, I work in the field very little. Typically, maybe a couple of days a month, I would go out with the worker. Or if we have what we call a CFT meeting, child family team meeting, then I can be out in the field meeting with community partners and family and other team members to discuss what's happening with the family. So maybe a few times a month, but for a social worker who's just typically out in the field and has cases assigned to them, they usually could be in the field on a daily basis.
What's the difference between a social worker being in the field and a supervisor?
Typically, a social worker who's out in the field is managing a caseload. So they would be out in the field meeting with their families, meeting with the children. Some could possibly be in placements. Some may be home a parent, so they're just checking to see what the status is in the home. For me as a supervisor, again, being out in the field would be more like going to meetings and maybe just accompanying my team, my social workers out in the field for support or just kind of evaluating their performance.
Now, I understand you guys deal with a lot of emotions when it comes to the caseloads. What's the most challenging part of your job?
I think that it's always very challenging when you have to remove children from their homes. It can get very emotional, very intense. So I think that's always one of the most challenging parts of the job.
How do you cope with those challenges?
I think you just have to kind of keep in mind that your job is that you're looking out for the safety of the child. You're trying to do what's in the best interest of the child. A lot of times, you know, family, parents, children don't see that, in the initial situation, but you just hope that later on, once they're going through the process, that you are making the home safer for them and putting them back in a better environment.
What are some common situations you deal with when involving families?
Common situations, a lot of referrals that we get have to do with intimate partner violence, substance abuse, sexual abuse, a lot of neglectful situations. So that would typically be what we're kind of dealing with.
Now, I understand trust is a big key factor when it comes to dealing with families. How do you approach building trust with those families?
I think a lot of times when you're working with the family, you really have to kind of be very sincere with them, very open. You want to provide them full disclosure of what's happening, explain the process, kind of check in with them, see if they have any questions, just kind of see where they're at. How are you feeling? Do you understand? Um, just really coming at them in a respectful manner really helps to build that trust.
How do you handle cases where families are resistant for help?
Well, you get a lot of those cases where you're dealing with resistant families, and it's typically kind of the same thing, just really being open with them, trying to explain the process. Sometimes when you have clients that are a little bit more resistant and maybe, what you're doing isn't working, you do kind of have to, switch a little and come off maybe a little bit stronger. Really kind of explain to them, if they're not cooperating, what can happen, and really hope that they understand that cooperating is in their best interest, and at the end of the day you're really just trying to help them.
What skills do you think are important when it comes to working with children in difficult situations?
I think you really have to talk to a child at their level. Really kind of let them know that, again, you're there to help. um, Building rapport is really big with kids, especially when you're, like you said, dealing with a child in a challenging situation. Really taking the time to get to know them, to let them be able to establish that trust with you, and just really letting them know that you're there to help.
How did you develop those skills when it came to working with children?
I think a lot of it takes practice. It's really time you kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work. Um, I think a lot of times just putting yourself in the other person's shoes really helps you to kind of understand where they're coming from. Really understanding your biases, looking at people's strengths, looking at what kind of makes people resilient. Just exploring all of that helps to build those skills.
Now, I understand that this job can be emotionally stressful. How do you handle the emotional stress when it comes to being a social worker?
Um, well, when you're in the moment, I think that you kind of just bury that emotional stress, and you have so much work to do that you're just really focused on what you have to do and getting the job done, so you don't really give yourself an opportunity to kind of get emotional about it. and then you just have to find out, figure out what it is that works for you. What's your self-care? For me, I like to work out. I like to do whatever it is that, I feel is relaxing. Maybe it's watching a movie or spending time with my family. So it's just really, making sure you take that time for self-care.
What about burnout? How do you avoid burnout?
I think everybody experiences burnout at times. The work is very stressful, can be very overwhelming. But you just have to, step away from the job when you have the opportunity, take your vacations, take your time off, enjoy your weekends, and just kind of really shut down when you're not working.
Going on about the DCFS system, how does the DCFS system support social workers?
Um, well, I think they could probably do a better job with that. But they do try to check in with social workers. Um, try to offer whatever kind of support. Maybe it's, assistance with people helping with the workload, maybe offering, overtime on the weekends to manage things. We do a lot of like team building and like off-site activities and things like that. So I mean, they do their best, but the work is the work.
What are some areas you think they can improve in?
I definitely think that reducing caseloads, reducing workloads would be an improvement. Sometimes, things you're so overwhelmed with families and cases and workloads that you don't get to spend the quality time that you want to with the clients. So, obviously if they could reduce the work, then that would be an improvement.
Now, I understand a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions when they think about DCFS. What are some misconceptions that people have about social workers that work for DCFS?
I think when people think of DCFS, they think that we're right away just trying to come in and take children from their homes. Some people will think that we have a quota of children that you have to remove. So I think those are some misconceptions, and really, the goal of our job is not to take children away, but rather to keep families together when they can safely remain together.
Do you have any idea on why you think these misconceptions exist?
I think that over the years, the department's evolved. I think there was a time when maybe situations were, they were different. The criteria to remove children was different. And I think that um, maybe families didn't get the resources that they needed. So a lot of these misconceptions came from just not, maybe inadequate resources, or just a different time with the department when, just operations were done differently.
As someone who is trying to pursue a career in social work and trying to get their master's degree in social work, what kind of education or training is needed to become a DCFS social worker?
Well, you could be a DCFS social worker with a bachelor's degree in a related field. It's just you start off like entering in as a trainee. It's always helpful to have an MSW, or a master's degree in a related field.
Are there any certifications or internships that you might recommend to either me or those who are trying to become social workers?
I think anytime you do any type of internship within a related field can be helpful. DCFS does also offer internship programs. So that would definitely be something to explore.
What skills do you think are essential for someone entering the field?
skills. You definitely want to be empathetic. I think that's, one of the number one skills, is that, you need to have empathy with your client.